Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Equality High Puna Strong Virtual Fair. We're having a little bit change in our schedule as Ashley, our very first keynote speaker, has a tight meeting schedule that just came up. And so instead of doing the initial introduction, we'd like to go ahead and have Ashley, our very first keynote speaker, speak. And Ashley, I'm just going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself because I have this really long bio, which will take up a lot of time, and I'd rather you talk about your efforts than me talk about you. So go ahead. Everyone welcome Ashley Kierkiewicz, our District 4 County Council member.
Thank you, Mar, so much. I'm not in a huge rush. We do have council meetings, but if you do have introductory remarks you'd like to welcome everyone with, feel free to go ahead and make those introductions.
We would like to let everyone know we have some tips for attendees, and then I'll go ahead and introduce you, Ashley. For our attendees, we want you to know that there will be 3 to 4 speakers in each of our 6 community topic rooms, some live and other are pre-recorded. You'll be able to contact the speakers through their speaker's profile located at tab in our main conference room. There will also be keynote speakers like Ashley, and a mixture of pre-recorded and live sessions after this at noon and at 3 o'clock. There are over 25 vendors located in our virtual exhibit hall, a diverse representation of resources, and attendees can chat or email with them. Vendors are located in our vendor tab. Attendees can visit any of their sessions at any time. And finally, if you missed a session and you'd like to come back and see it, it'll be available for 6 months after our event.
It'll be available for 6 months after our event.
Questions will be selected on relevance to topic. If you're unable to get your questions in, we'll do our best to forward them to the speaker and get them answered for you. This is a public forum and event, and this is being recorded. Your participation in this event constitutes express permission and consent for Equality High's unlimited use of this event footage in whole or in parts. And finally, at the moderator's discretion, any use of disrespectful language, gestures, or actions by any attendees will result in removal from this event and may include all future Equality High events being prohibited from attending those events. And then our disclaimer, statements and opinions expressed by guests and members of the audience do not reflect the views of Equality High or its members. So welcome again, everyone. I'd like to introduce our very first guest, Ashley Kierkiewicz, Hawaii County Council District 4, representative of Puna. So Ashley is Hawaii born and raised. She was first elected in 2018 to represent Council District 4 and is serving her second term. Ashley is focused on empowering community, leveraging public-private partnerships, as she's doing here with us, and activating local economy so all residents can thrive. Ashley is the chair on Planning and Housing Agency. She is also the vice chair of the Community and Governmental Relations, Operations and Economic Development, and the Committee on Human and Social Services. Ashley leads revitalized Puna activations and co-chairs the Economic Resiliency Capacity Area to support eruption recovery, overseeing community-based projects such as resiliency hubs, technology and innovation, and industry and workforce development. And then Ashley represents Hawaii County at the national level as well as a member of the NACO Resilience County Advisory Board and NACO Arts and Culture Commission. She serves as a volunteer board member of Vibrant Hawaii and chairs the Economy Stream and Resilience Hub Stream. Ashley is also the community representative for the Pahoa High and Intermediate School County Community Council. And finally, Ashley and her partner, Kau'i Nakanelua, a county firefighter, are proud parents of 2, Arya and Toby, and reside at Hawaiian Paradise Park. So please welcome our very first morning speaker, Ashley Kierkiewicz. Welcome, Ashley.
Aloha, Mara. Can you hear me okay? Mark, can I just get a quick thumbs up that you can hear me all right? Okay, thank you for letting me know that you can hear me. I'm going to do a quick screen share. Have some wonderful storytelling to share with all of you. A lot of amazing work that's happening in community that I definitely want to highlight. Thank you again, Mar, for inviting me to participate. Really excited about today's agenda. The excellent resources and present agenda, and there's just so much that has been put together that is meant to strengthen all aspects of everyone's life. So mahalo nui for taking the time to pull this important event together. Preparing for today really got me thinking about where we've been as a community, how far we've come, and really how strong we are as individual people and a collective. I'm going to take you through some recent disasters that we have experienced over the last few years, starting with Tropical Storm Isabel in 2014, where trees downed power lines, folks were stuck at home. There was no electricity for weeks on end, but out of that sprang forth a number of community efforts. And we got to see neighbors taking care of neighbors and just an outpouring of support from folks around the island and across the state. In 2014 and 2015, we had the Pahoa lava flow, slow moving, but still incredibly worrisome and nerve-wracking because it threatened to cut off one roads and leaving many of our Puna residents potentially displaced and unable to access the rest of town. And then in 2018, we experienced the devastating Kilauea eruption that took homes and livelihoods and forever changed the landscape of our Puna community. And there's still so much that we are all trying to rebuild from as individual households and as a community. But what I do want to emphasize is that out of each of these disasters, there was a spark of community movement, which was really exciting. And something I want to focus on because all of these efforts help to strengthen our social fabric and really built us up to the different community collaborative initiatives that we have happening today. Out of the Tropical Storm Isabel, there were the incredible bodacious wind of Pahoa, finding folks in need of kokua and going door to door, making sure folks were okay. We had a surgence of CERT teams around Puna communities, wanting to make sure that we were prepared ahead of multiple disasters. During the 2018 flow, there was the creation of Pu'uhonua o Puna, Information and Supply Hub, also known as the Hub, proud to be one of the co-founders and captains of that, of the Hub. And what was so beautiful about all of these initiatives were they were by residents for residents. It wasn't some fancy national group coming in to take care. It was people that we know digging in to take care of their neighbors in a time of need. And we had media from all over the world coming to track what was happening on a daily basis. And as co-founders and captains of the Hub, we really wanted to make sure that we had our purpose down and our hearts in the right place, and everything that we did was meant to exemplify aloha and the power of the community. Because we were taught by our parents and our kupuna that when something happens, you rise to the occasion to take care. When you are in a position to do something, you should. And so it also, in thinking about everything that has happened, was also a moment to think about how community is taking power back, taking things into our own hands, and doing things on our terms in ways that resonate with community values and are doing so in partnership and in concert with Aina. Other things that came out of these disasters were incredible partnerships. During the eruption, we partnered with World Central Kitchen to push out meals and get those delivered to Ohana all throughout the Puna region and staying at the various shelters. There was also a community-driven effort to raise more than $70,000 to purchase a mobile shower that helped folks have access to a hot shower after a long day of volunteering or after losing their home and not having anywhere to go. Nothing like a hot shower to just rejuvenate, but also restore a sense of dignity. And there are a number of community partners, t-shirt companies, local foundations, church groups that all felt this was a worthwhile investment to make, so that anytime we are facing another natural disaster, we have our own mobile shower unit. And in non-emergency times, it serves as a resource for people experiencing homelessness. We also saw community come together around building of micro units, micro shelters right in the heart of Pahoa for folks that lost their homes. So really exemplified what we can do as a community if we work together. Really just showed how powerful and creative we are. We just need to dig down deep and tap into that. A few of the things that kind of came out of these events were moments and opportunities to celebrate community and elevate the incredible assets and people that we have. One of the first things that we did to bring community together was create this wonderful mural at the Pahoa pool that was inspired by imagery captured by Andrew Hara during the eruption, and it shows the eruption flow, the proliferation of life, that raw volcanic energy, and flowing into the beautiful blues and greens representative of the landscape and the ocean of the Puna coastline. We also worked with a Puna-based artist who happened to attend Pahoa High and Intermediate, Kai Kalukukui, to work with local students to talk about, despite everything that Puna has faced, there are still things that make it strong. And sometimes you hear people say, oh, you know, those Puna people. What does that even mean, right? And so this was a chance for our students to take back the ability to craft a narrative on their own terms and tell the story that does our community justice and showcase all of the incredible attributes and stories of resilience. And so this was something that students were able to help ideate and to paint. It exposed them to the opportunity to be an artist and travel the world, if that was something that they were passionate about. But really what this was meant to do was just showcase everything that is beautiful about Puna, and you can't miss it as you're driving through Pahoa town. So just a really wonderful place for students to really get involved and celebrate everything that they love about the region. Another way that we helped to celebrate and bring community together was through a community block party, Activate Puna. That was a chance to elevate various artisans and tastemakers and just wonderful local businesses and people and musicians in the region. And after a year of recovering from the eruption, this was a much needed event to just celebrate how strong and resilient we are as a community. We also worked with a number of folks on this call, groups around the region, to paint and illustrate their hopes and their dreams for Puna. And we were so happy to be able to string this throughout Pahoa town and have people feel really inspired and feel the aloha and love that were coming from these flags. And just when we were hitting our stride as a community, COVID hit. And we had to jump back immediately into emergency response mode. But because of all of the disasters that we have experienced as a community, I think it was really easy for us to turn that switch on and activate critical supports to serve those who were most vulnerable and really needed some support and kokua. And so, Puna, you showed up. You showed up to be part of meal bag distributions from Feed the People, carrying that through, helping Keiki during the summer with the Kaukau for Keiki food program. You helped to pack and distribute care packages for children and kupuna. You showed up to beautify community spaces with a number of grassroots community cleanups, picking up trash on the side of the road. Anything that you could to revitalize community and uplift people's spirits. A number of you also showed up to be captains for resilience hubs that were in churches, were at farmers markets, were in community centers. You delivered resilient support. You supported Keiki. You helped out community, not because you were asked, but because you felt this was a way in which you could contribute. So there's so much that folks can learn from what we are doing in Puna. And I think it just goes to the fact that we have something running in our veins. And it's this sense of e kuliana kako. It's everyone's responsibility. Again, seeing beauty where you can and contributing to the betterment of community if you have the ability to. We've harnessed all of that energy over the last 3 years and have committed to doing something as a county in partnership with community, and that's a series of activations. These are photos from the first activation we did in June in Leilani Estates. We wanted to start there because that's where the 2018 flow began, and it was an incredible coming together of community. The air was electric, and this was after not seeing each other for over a year and a half because of COVID, but because everyone was so good and our numbers were low, we could pull this event off. We had all kinds of leaders from county government there, folks from the community, hungry for information, but also really hungry to just be with each other, to ideate, to co-create, to think about all the visions that we've come up with each other through Puna CDPs, through our Kilauea Recovery and Resilience Plan. All these incredible ideas were discussed at this platform. And we talked about, hey, how are we gonna work together and pull together to make all of that happen? And what came out of that has been Revitalize Puna. And you guys are the first to see this, but this is our official logo. And what we hope is that every time you see this, it sparks joy. It is something that you associate with positive experiences that you've been a part of, you've helped contribute to, you've helped build. And I'll take you really quickly through the meaning of the logo. All of those circles that you see, they represent the resilience capacity areas and the action teams, the people behind the work. It's in the shape of a wave to convey movement that's driven by community. And it really represents a chain of community and county members will be working together through this platform. And just like a wave, resilience capacity areas provide an influx of ideas and actions, big and small. The circles symbolize inclusivity and collaboration, and the bright colors denote the vibrancy of work happening by the collective. So again, look out for this. We are doing incredible things as county and community. It is a way for both sides to be open, to be vulnerable, to strengthen relationships, to strengthen that trust, and to take big leaps together or small steps. But the point is we are moving forward and doing amazing things for community together. As I mentioned, there are a number of resilience capacity areas that are contributing to this revitalization work. I won't read through the laundry list of all the things that we've committed ourselves to doing together over the next couple of years, but just high level. Social resilience is focusing on building up hubs, increasing preparedness within community, strengthening health and well-being, and bolstering our local food systems. Cultural resilience are focused on Malama of our Wahiku Puna, our sacred spaces, conducting placemaking initiatives that is elevating the stories of the various communities throughout Puna, and doing demonstrations around culture-based education in and out of schools. The economic resilience team is focused on, again, utilizing resilience hubs as a place to ideate and to create. These also can be used in times of disaster, mobilizing to help deploy emergency response and support. Economic resilience is also focused on how do we take better use or make better use of and leverage technology to spark innovation and build up our industry and workforce development, supporting industries that are conducive to the Puna community and that we are hearing is where you want our community to go. Building up the resilience of the built environment through increased connectivity, that's both digital and through a road network. More infrastructure, which is happening through the infusion of federal dollars, creating a master plan for Pahoa Village, and thinking about what it means to have sustainable housing. We are seeing the impacts of more disasters because of the onset of climate change. So wanting to make sure that we are living in communities that are sustainable and resilient. Dovetailing off of that, building up the resilience of our natural environment, mitigating invasive species, which we saw wreak havoc during Tropical Storm Iselle, and doing what we can to reforest and replant native species. And again, employing strategies that help us to adapt to climate change and restore Aina where possible. And finally, I would be remiss without saying that in order to move all of this work forward, it's not just going to be us, it's going to be embracing the next generation of leaders. So ensuring that youth are involved in all aspects of this revitalization work, giving them space to exercise their voice and to take action as members of our Puna community. This is an open invitation, you guys, to get involved. Everyone has the ability to contribute. Commit as little or as much time that you have, but we all have time, talent, and treasure that we can all be sharing. Really excited to share, and I think a number of you know this, but it goes without saying that I think we all knew the work that we are doing as a Puna and Hawaii Island community are really incredible. But we have some national organizations that happen to think so too. The Council on Development Finance Agencies has really been excited to see what we are doing to support disaster recovery and resilience. My office, in partnership with the recovery team, we were successful in being one of 6 communities. We were the first selected to receive technical assistance from this group that will help us identify different forms of capital to leverage federal, stateside, different products we can be developing. But the point of their partnership with our county is to help us build a network of resilience hubs in Puna with an emphasis on bolstering our local food system, because that's what we hear over and over again, is that Puna can be the breadbasket for Hawaii Island and our state community. So leaning on these partners to help us architect a funding roadmap to help make that happen. We're also really excited to be one of 18 communities across the United States, you guys, selected by USDA for the Rural Placemaking Innovation Challenge. So incredibly exciting. Again, we all know that the work that we are doing is incredible. And so if you needed validation that we're on the right track, that we are worthy of time and investment, here you are. The spotlight is on Puna. We're making amazing things happen. And now folks around the country are going to be watching and learning from us because we do have a lot to share. You know, in closing, it's amazing to work in partnership with all of you. It's been a long road. Sometimes it's exhausting, but it's all worth it in the end because I can see just how much it means to everybody to come together and to work together. And while it's incredibly daunting to turn ideas into action, especially during these precarious times, we can because we're working together. I want to close by reading a really short excerpt by this wonderful author, Cleo Wade. This book is called Heart Talk, Poetic Wisdom for a Better Life. And sometimes when I need a pick-me-upper or I just want to do a little bit of self-care, I go ahead and read something from this book. And I want to share something with you that really resonated and was really pertinent to this discussion. When we overcome our fear of failing, we have the power to step into the magnificence of our resilience. Do things you are afraid to do. Do the things that feel big. Do the things that show you what you're made of. So stepping into the unknown, having courage, making bold moves, not being afraid to try, embracing failure, but knowing you're moving forward. That's all part of this journey that we're on together to build a stronger, more resilient Puna. And it's all worth it because we're doing it together. Mahalo nui, Mar, and everyone for having me today. Really excited about the day that is ahead for all of you. Can't wait to be working with all of you through all of these different resilience capacity areas. Do look forward to seeing you real soon. Mahalo.
Mahalo nui, Ashley. Thank you so much for that very inspirational message and sharing the different efforts that the county, yourself, and the community is doing to revitalize Puna. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you as one of our keynote speakers, and you have a good day. We would like to introduce our next guest speaker, our keynote speaker, Douglas Namle. Douglas Namle serves as the Disaster Recovery Officer for the County of Hawaii, leading the recovery efforts from the 2018 Kilauea lava eruption. Before taking this position, He was the Administrative Service Officer for the County Planning Department. And prior to relocating to Hawaii Island, Doug served in the New York City office of the mayor, where he held senior positions with the Office of Recovery and Resiliency and the Climate Policy and Policy team, working at the intersection of climate change mitigation and adaptation. Douglas previously worked in a community development, community-based planning, policy advocacy, and resident leadership development with working class immigrant communities in New York City. Douglas received a Master's of Urban Planning degree from New York City University and a bachelor's degree in Urban Studies from Columbia University. He is a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. Before I introduce Doug, our next keynote speaker, we want you to know that registered attendees will have direct access to all of our recording of all speakers in each of the 7 community topic rooms and keynote speakers like Ashley and Doug up to 6 months after this event. Also, for more information on anything that you see here today, please go to our website, www.equalityhigh.org. And then also, just to announce that our next Equality High Puna Strong virtual fair will be in April of 2022. So please contact us if you're an organization that is interested and would like to participate. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Douglas Namle to everyone. Douglas, take it away.
Thanks so much, Mar. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Great. I'm testing out a new headset today. So really, I'm so happy to be with everyone this morning, and really want to commend Mar and Cody and Ray and the leadership and membership of Equality High for organizing this resource fair. You know, from our team, the county is really proud to be able to support Equality High in this event and in bringing people together through our partnership with Hawaii Community Foundation and the Puna Strong Grant Program. You know, when we were at the table kind of receiving applications and meeting people from the communities of Puna who were interested in pursuing funding, I think collectively our team was really excited to see this idea, right, to be able to bring people together to really serve the mission and the constituencies of Equality High, but also to bring everyone in our communities together with these resources and with this knowledge. You know, I'm really excited to hear that we're going to be together again in April. I hope that we can be in person at that time, you know, when it is safe to do so. But I just really look forward to everything that people are going to get out of this event today. So to kind of frame my remarks, I wanted to reflect a bit on what does this mean, this moment we find ourselves in. You know, Ashley, in her very thoughtful words, identified some of the stressor, these chronic moments that our communities have faced, from Isel to the lava flow in Pahoa, the 2018 eruption, and now COVID. And I think it's really important to cast this moment not only in terms of those shock events, which some folks call, but also the chronic stressors that we as individuals and our families and our communities face, and what happens when a disaster with a capital D occurs, right? And I think for me, not only in my personal existence, but also in my professional life and my role here, leading this work with the county, I think it's super critical to also highlight the intersections of our lives and what that means in terms of how we experience these types of shock events, how we all come together to respond to them, and then what does disaster recovery look like in light of kind of these intersections. You know, full transparency, I'm gonna start with some real talk and really call out issues that, you know, we really see in this work, but also in our communities. But then I also want to pivot on, so how do we move forward and how do we actually live what we know and what we see in our communities? I'm also a policy and data geek, I'll be really honest. And so I want to zoom a little bit on the stories that we know and also the data that we have, especially for our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, gender nonconforming, queer, and ally community members. In particular, how do we kind of collaborate and lift up kind of the realities, but also the strengths of folks in our community in this work of community development, but also, in this context of disaster recovery that we're all going through right now. I will kind of probably find myself using the acronym LGBTQA or queer, or the term queer interchangeably. But I really do want to call out that it's about the spectrum of sexual identity and also the spectrum of gender that exists in our society, in our cultures, and in our lives. But words may come short. So I just wanted to that's what I mean when I say these things. So, my title is Disaster Recovery Officer. What does that mean? A lot of our work is about connecting with communities in the way that Ashley described through our programming, through our coalition building, through these projects and efforts. But a lot of it is also around regulation, policy, and understanding how regulation and policy and funding needs to live on the ground. And today is not necessarily about that more technical aspect of the work, but I do kind of want to center what it means in terms of some of the principles and mindsets and the way that we do our work in a way that is inclusive of everyone in our community. So, I think in our current moment with COVID-19, we hear the phrase a lot that, we're all in this together. And I'll speak from my perspective, I think that's a really valuable rallying cry around us being able to come together to support our communities through this moment. But I also feel it's really critical to acknowledge that we're not all in this together in terms of access to resources, access to wealth, knowledge and connections and networks, strengths and resources that we can rely upon when moments like this happen. I think about the person who just tested positive and now needs to quarantine for 14 days with no notice. Maybe that person has 14 days of food in their pantry, but we know there are folks in our communities who don't have that. And so how do they access that kind of resource to make sure that while they are doing the right thing for their health and for the health of our communities, that their needs are also being met. I think about the young person who may be gender nonconforming, for whom school is probably their one outlet to be fully themselves, because they can't always be themselves at home. And with the challenges of kind of pursuing education from home, but also not having that space to breathe in their life every day because they could not go to school, is really a trigger of stress, and really makes it that much more challenging to work through these types of disaster moments. I think following the 2018 killer eruption, there were folks who had access to resources, networks to rely upon, where they could find kind of safe shelter, a place to stay, a place to kind of keep their animals, or kind of to chart a path to securing a home, reestablishing their farm. On that day of the event, we're all really faced with these challenges, right? What's before us? These questions of how we're going to make it through and how are we going to recover. But as time goes on, right, members of our community are able to tap resources and connections and supports to be able to rebuild their lives. But not everyone has the same access to resources. In a post-disaster context, right? Undocumented folks in our communities aren't able to fully participate in the economic systems and really have to rely on informal networks to make a living. After a disaster, they are not eligible for federal assistance that often comes in and is that first kind of dose of assistance that supports people in rebuilding their lives. We could really take a hard look at kind of what this means in terms of the intersections of people's day-to-day lives and how that actually plays out after a disaster like the 2018 eruption, or like the significant disruption that the COVID-19 pandemic has caused on so many people's lives. To really take a pivot on who are our LGBTQA plus communities, if it's okay, I want to share a resource that I often go to just as a starting point. We know who our people are. that's not really a question, but I think it's actually incredibly telling to look at the data that we do have on our communities as a starting point to understand what do our daily lives look like and how do we kind of design days like today to connect to resources, to build networks, and I think in certain ways to build power as a result. I'm going to see if I can share screen, if that's acceptable to our event organizers today, just to run through something very quickly. So I want to share a resource that, like I said, I go to often. This is actually a program at the University of California, Los Angeles School of Law, the Williams Institute. They are a policy think tank about LGBTQA issues nationally. And I think one way that they are a great resource is that they look at public national data sets and they identify kind of what do we know about our LGBTQ plus communities. So to zoom into Hawaii, the map you see here is a map of the percentage of individuals that identify as LGBT, kind of in the framing that this organization uses. We look at the darker shades in terms of 44.5% of the population or above. This is a national data set. We can kind of caveat it all kinds of ways, but I think it's a really important starting point in many respects. So when you zoom into Hawaii, it starts to really talk about what are some of the demographics of who are identified as LGBTQA in our communities. And so I think something that is important to call out is not only the representation of identity of kind of folks in our communities, both in terms of sexual identity and gender expression, but also, who is raising children, right? And actually, so 30% of individuals who are LGBTQA are raising children, raising families in our communities today. I think the racial ethnic makeup is similar in some respects to the community writ large and the population statewide. But I think also, if you look at the bar chart to the right, it kind of breaks out the age groupings of those who identify as LGBTQA in these national surveys versus those who do not, right? And, I think just looking at the intersections of things, I often think about the important work that many folks who are the organizations represented here today, the exhibitors who are also participating, they're really taking a hard look at the many facets of our community, not only how to create inclusive spaces and supports for LGBTQA young people who are coming up and kind of, really trying to get education, try to make a living, and what spaces there are for them, but also for our kupuna who are navigating that point in their lives, lived through a time when we could not have these kind of discussions that we're having this morning openly and in an embracing way. But now, as they're navigating senior care and their life options, we know that those spaces aren't always as safe or inclusive either for them at this stage in their lives. And then also looking at kind of national data sets, these are clues, right? A similar run of data for LGBTQA and non-identified folks. We see that unemployment rates are pretty comparable, but a really stark statistic kind of is an outlier around food insecurity and those who have incomes less than $24,000 a year, right? And so, and this could correlate with education. This could correlate with not only discrimination in the workplace, access to resources. We can have a long conversation about the why, but I do think it's important to call out the what, right? Food insecurity is disproportionately represented among LGBTQA members of our communities here in Hawaii. And, as we kind of zoom in, right, there's just kind of further statistics and this big one around kind of percentage with children, those who are raising families, and the resources supports that they need. So this is a very kind of high level look at what we know from data and from statistics. And so I'd like to kind of pivot on what do we do about it, right? And how do we approach this work that we do after a moment of recovery? And I want to really look back at a lot of the work that communities led, which Ashley highlighted after the 2018 eruption. I think we've all experienced also a lot of this community-led response that's also been government supported post COVID-19, right? Or maybe it's not fair to say post, amidst COVID-19 and the health and economic crises that this pandemic has created in our communities. The data is very clear, once again, that those who lack access to health coverage, those who for any number of reasons, including histories of discrimination, do not have trust and faith in our healthcare systems and institutions that are there for us in moments like this, but also the disproportionate outcomes in terms of disease burden and death from COVID-19 among our Indigenous communities and Pacific Islander communities and Filipino communities is really a statewide issue that speaks to, I think, some of these intersections that it's important to call out. So that was kind of the real talk part of really what I wanted to share to open up a dialogue about how do we move forward and how do we do this. I think it happens at an institutional level, but it can also happen at an interpersonal and individual level. I know that the community mobilizations that happened, following the 2018 eruption and with the COVID-19, these were spaces that were inclusive of everyone in our communities, right? People needed a hot shower, people needed a hot meal, people needed a place to get a backpack for their kids, right? Because those were gone. And so it is very, very expected and kind of embraced that we find that inclusive aspect of our communities. As we move forward in the recovery process, I think it's really important to look at our policies and the way that we as institutions, both organizations, as local government, as state and federal government, design and execute the assistance that we provide. I'm really excited about the program today because I look across the organizations, the exhibitors, the speakers that have joined, and I know that we have people here who look at this kind of intersectional lens about identifying the needs and also the assets that are in our communities and rising to the moment, right? And so that's really exciting for me today. And I think at an interpersonal level, to build teams and build networks that are inclusive and empowering. So the fact that I am queer is helpful in terms of understanding some of these intersections. But I think driving a lot of what we do is about embracing everything that our team members bring together. And that I think also drives a lot of the coalition building and convening work, through the implementation of the resilience capacity areas, through the way that we try to really build with members of our community who are still in recovery from the 2018 eruption. And have also really now had to struggle with the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's really about heart and mindset. And that's also how we identify and look to lean into the intersections of our communities and what that actually means on the ground in people's lives and in people's paths along recovery from moments like this. So I hope that kind of what I've been able to share helps to guide conversations that we will continue to have throughout the day. It's been a real privilege to be part of this event and also to be with everyone this morning. So with that, happy to hand it back to Mar on the rest of our morning together.
Thank you, Doug. And let me go ahead and highlight my screen here. All right. Thank you, Doug and Ashley, for the compelling and inspirational talk this morning. Before I introduce our Equality High Board of Directors President, I'd like to let everyone know that for those who came in late, if you're interested in seeing what you missed, registered attendees will have direct access to all our recordings of all speakers in each of the 7 community topic rooms and keynote speakers up to 6 months after this event. And also for more information, please go to our website
www.equalityhigh.org. And again, I want to announce here that our next Equality High Puna Strong virtual fair will be April of 2022. More details to follow, so save that date on your calendar. And please contact us if you have any organizations or groups that might be interested in participating. So I'd like to hand this over to Ray Saladares, our Equality High Board President. Ray?
Hi, good morning, everyone. And again, my name is Ray Saladares, and I am the board president for Equality High. And I just want to provide a brief welcome and kind of give you some background on Equality High. Am I muted? Yes. Okay. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. So as I said, my name is Ray Solidaris, and I'm the board president for Equality High. We are a 501c3 nonprofit whose mission envisions a thriving and empowering culture that proactively engages in creating an inclusive and diverse queer community through aloha, leadership, resources, services, and education. With 80% of our board members residing in the Puna district, this particular virtual resource fair is very personal to us. We understand the struggle to rebuild when disaster occurs, like the 2018 eruption. We too have experienced the effects of COVID-19 pandemic and the devastating emotional, economic, and spiritual impact it has had on all of us. So this fair brings together an array of information and resources that we hope will build resiliency within our county to make Puna strong and our community as a whole stronger together. Our team also recognizes that we could not address every key area that we would like to. So, as Mar had mentioned earlier, we are happy to announce that we are hosting a second resource fair scheduled for April of 2022, where we'll have the opportunity to bring more information and more resources to all of you. But for today, I encourage all of you to interact with one another through our community forums and explore the virtual exhibitor halls for more information on all of the amazing organizations that have opted to be participating today. So on behalf of Equality High, our dedicated and motivated board of directors, it's my sincere privilege to welcome you to the 2021 Puna Strong Virtual Resource Fair. So again, thank you for participating and joining us, and enjoy the day.